Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And today I wanted to try and talk about and break down a system that I would use to start learning any language from scratch. And I know in the future I will learn Portuguese, so I'm definitely going to be implementing this plan and this sort of structure in order to help me. The reason I think this is so important when learning a language is because nowadays a lot of us don't have much time. Some of us may only have an hour, 2 hours a week to dedicate to a language, and this really isn't a lot of time. So you need to make sure that every single minute that you are trying to learn and dedicate yourself to learn that language, you need to make sure that it is as effective and as efficient as possible. And the way to do that is by having a set plan and a set system, so that when you sit down to study, you know exactly what you're going to do, you know the most effective way to do it for yourself, and you know what goal you are trying to reach for the end of that week, month, 3 months and year. And hopefully this video, I'll help you have a bit more clarity as to why you want to learn a language and the steps that you're going to take in order to get there. And before we get started, I just wanted to say that my name is Rory. I've been studying Spanish for around 4 years now, and I like to think I'm fluent. During this process, I've learned Spanish in a school system, and I've also learned Spanish by myself during this gap year that I'm on. So I've had both sides of the coin, studying by myself and learning how to reach fluency by myself, and learning how to be taught a language through a school system. And that's why I feel educated enough to speak about this sort of structure today. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. And the first thing we'll break down within this system is the goal. The reason we start with thinking about our goal is because if we don't have a target or something we are trying to reach when learning a language, how can we know where we're going? How can we create a plan or a roadmap? We need a target, something to aim for, so we have clarity and structure when learning a language. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions that will help you sort of narrow down exactly what your goal is. So the first question I want you to ask related to your goal is, what do I want to achieve learning my language? And obviously for most of us this will be fluency, but for some people it might be job related. I know a YouTuber called Paul, he has a quite successful Spanish channel, and he initially did it for his job. And for some of us, it's not always fluency. Some of us, it might just be having a basic conversation or being able to greet people and get by on holiday. There's different levels to this, so make sure you're clear on what your goal is. And the second question is why? Why do you want to learn this language? And you're going to really sit with this question. And I think it's good to write this one out and put it somewhere visible in your room or where you're going to be studying, just so you have that motivation and that reminder every single week and every time you go to sit down and learn your language as to why you want to learn. And if you aren't 100% sure about the motivations and reasons why you want to learn a language, you can watch my video that explains why I learned Spanish. And this video is of me speaking in Spanish, but there are English subtitles, so you can still follow along whether you're learning Spanish or not. And the final question I want you to ask yourself is, from what country or what region do I want to learn this language from? And obviously for some languages this is easier than others. I mean, for example, Spanish, there's so many countries, 21 or 22 countries that have Spanish as their national language. Even within these countries, if you pick a country, say Colombia, the accent within Colombia varies so much depending on where you choose to learn Spanish from within Colombia. So just be careful. And I think trying to narrow down as much as you can what region or what country you want to learn your language from is just going to help you be more concise and be able to find resources related to that accent and the slang that they use in that area. And I think not knowing exactly what region you want to learn your language from is going to make your process much less effective. So I think trying to narrow down exactly what country you want to learn that language from is a very good idea before starting to learn that language. So hopefully if you answer those 3 questions and really sit and think with them, it will give you a real clear idea of where you want to go in your language learning journey. And now let's move on to the system that's going to help you become more efficient when learning this language. And by the way, if you are learning Spanish and you're interested in investing a bit of money into your Spanish learning journey, you can book a free call with me. There's a link in the description, and we can discuss how you can fit onto my one-to-one coaching program. Yeah, without further ado, let's continue with the video. And the questions I'd like you to ask yourself related to this system is, first of all, how much time do I have per week that I can sit down and learn this language? And be realistic with this time, because I know a lot of people might try and say, oh, I can throw an extra half an hour at the end of my Monday when I've been working for 8-9 hours that day. That's not what you want to do. You want to have a set time where you know each week you're going to be fresh, you're going to be consistent, and you're going to be able to sit down and really focus. If you can find a slot, maybe in the evening sometime or in the morning, where you can get up and first thing in the morning just get 2 hours done or 3 hours done ideally, and if you can have 2 of those throughout the week, that'd be great. But obviously it depends on your goals. And not only do I want you to write down the actual time, I want you to write down the specific days in the week that you can do that, to help you know exactly when each week you're going to be learning that language. So you can write down and be like, okay, every single Monday morning I know I'm going to do 2 hours of work, and every single Saturday morning I'm also going to be doing 2 hours of work. And the next question I want you to ask yourself is, how much time do I spend listening to music or podcasts that aren't related to the language I want to learn? And you may know where this question is going, and basically what I want you to be doing, which I will explain a little bit later, is replacing all this time that you spend listening to music and podcasts that aren't related to your language and flipping that into podcasts related to your language. I've spoken about the importance of listening in loads of my past videos, and I will get into that a little bit later into the video, but I think just sit down and ask yourself, okay, well, if I commute to and from work every day and my commute is an hour, eventually what we're going to want to do is replace that time with your listening. This is, again, is another really powerful tool that you can use to up the amount of time you're actually listening to your language each week. And the final 2 questions I want you to ask yourself within this system is, what are my interests? And this one may sound a bit weird, and you may be thinking, well, how does this relate to my learning process within this language? And I think this question is really, really important, because what you want to do and what I've done when learning Spanish is I've always tried to link it to what I'm interested in. So I've always tried to listen to podcasts, talk about and learn vocab related to the things I'm interested in. And for me, that's mainly football. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I love football. I talk about football all day long. So I think that's been one great motivator for me in keeping me on top of my Spanish and keeping me enjoying my Spanish, is learning new vocab, being able to have conversations with people in Spanish about football and listening to debate shows and podcasts and YouTube channels in Spanish about football. I think finding your interest, find the things that you enjoy and they're going to keep you motivated and wanting to come back to learn this language, so that you can have conversations and hear other people's opinions and perspectives on what you enjoy. And I think this is a really powerful tool that I think is underutilised a lot of the time when learning a language. A lot of people just sit down and they study vocab that they're not really interested in and stuff that they might not use day to day. And I think, yeah, trying to focus in on the things you're actually interested in is a really great tool in order for you to stay motivated and stay concentrated on learning your language. And the final question of this system is, what is my most effective method of learning? And this, I think, is the most difficult question that I've asked you so far. And the reason for this is because it's hard to know what is the most effective way of learning. And I think for me, I had to really go back and think about my school days and think about what were the most effective ways that I used to help me pass my exams. And for me personally, it was two ways. First of all, it was literally just speaking as much as possible, explaining and talking out loud and describing what I'd learned and what I understand. And the other way for me, unfortunately, which is really not fun, is sitting down and literally just writing out flashcards, testing myself. So I'd read the word, cover it up, try and remember it, and I do that. And that works really, really well for me. And I did that for biology when I was back in school. So I sort of thought, oh, okay, well, I use this for biology, maybe I can use this for vocab in Spanish. And these are the kind of things you want to be doing, is looking back on your past and thinking about what are the most effective ways that you use to revise for school, and then how can you implement those into your Spanish or language learning journey in general. And don't worry if you don't have an answer to this question, because I know it is really, really difficult. And my recommendation to you, if you don't know this answer, is basically for the first week or first couple weeks, what I want you to do is to explore and experiment as much as possible. Try as many different ways as possible of learning a language, whether that's writing, listening to certain types of podcasts, mimicking the way people speak, I don't know, reading out loud, try my flashcards, just explaining everything that you learn. Try all these different methods of learning and see which one works best for you. And maybe give them a little rating out of 10 after you've tried one at the end of each session. And then maybe at the end of a couple of weeks or the end of that month, you can look back at all the ratings that you've given for the different methods that you used. And then you can just pick the one that was the closest to 10 or had the highest rating, and then you can just use that moving forwards. So don't worry too much if you don't have the answer now. Hopefully now at this stage of the video, you have a clear idea of why you want to learn your language, what you want to learn your language for, and from what area you want to learn this language. And then you've got a system now in place that's going to help you revise and learn the most effectively for this language. And now the next stage is actually implementing a week-by-week plan that's going to help you reach these longer-term goals. And the way I'd recommend going about this plan is by doing it in 3-month blocks, because for me personally, I think 3 months is enough time to make a good amount of progress in learning a language. So what I do is set a 3-month goal and work backwards from that, because as I've said before, you want to create that goal and then create the roadmap to that goal, because if you don't have a goal and you're trying to create a plan, well, where's your plan going if you don't have a goal? I want you to set month 1 goal and month 2 goal that are going to help you reach that 3rd month. And then I want you to set week-by-week tasks that you think are going to help you get there. So for example, if I wanted to be able to speak in the present tense at the end of 3 months and have a decent range of vocab and grammar, how am I going to get there? Well, I'm going to have to learn how to conjugate verbs. I'm going to have to learn the conjugations for the present tense. I'm going to have to learn the basic range of vocab so I can have a conversation. I need to be listening to Spanish so I can understand how natives speak and to be able to pronunciate words. And maybe I need to invest in a grammar resource or find a good grammar resource online so that I get a good base of grammar so that I can go on and start speaking. And obviously I need to be practicing speaking as early as possible so that I feel comfortable by month 3 to be able to actually have a conversation with someone in the present tense. So these are the kind of things you need to be thinking about in your plan to get to that 3-month goal. This is really important. I think plan as much as possible so that you have a structure to stick to, because if you don't have this, it's very easy to slack off as well. Like if you don't know exactly what you're doing week by week, it's easy to just sit down and spend half an hour procrastinating or half an hour not really working to the most of your potential. But if you sit down and you know, oh, I've got an hour of verb conjugation I need to do, and then I need to speak for 20 minutes, and then I've got to do 40 minutes of grammar work, because if I don't, I'm not going to reach my goal at the end of the 3 months. So these are the kind of things you want to be doing and have in place so that you know when you sit down, you've got to make this time effective and efficient, and you will, because you know you've got a goal and a roadmap in place already. And I think this is why a plan is really, really important. So make sure you stay on top of this. And I want to give you some disclaimers and tips that I'd personally use as well, just generally for language learning. So let's get into those now. First of all, it's like I've said, we want to replace all that time that you're doing listening to podcasts and music that isn't related to your language and replace that with podcast listening to your language. And the reason I recommend podcasts and not music in the language you want to learn is because you're actually going to be hearing conversations and you're going to be hearing a lot more words per minute, and it's easier to stay focused on podcasts because it's easier to get lost in the melody and sort of rhythm of music and not really understand or pay attention to what they're saying. So that's why I'd always recommend podcasts over music when learning a language. And another one that I have is speaking as much as possible. I think after the first week, you should be trying to speak for at least a minute a week, because hopefully after the first week, you know sort of the basic greetings and you know how to, say, hi, my name is Rory, and sort of, go about the basics. And I think, trying to speak as early as possible is a really, really key thing that you need to be doing, because I know a lot of people that have always neglected speaking and they've just done listening and reading and writing, and they've got to a really good level in Spanish, but they still can't speak. They still haven't gotten over the hurdle of understanding how to pronunciate words and actually have a conversation with someone in their language that they want to learn. And this is a really big problem, because for most of us, learning a language is so that we can travel or have conversations and interact with people in that language. And most people got to the stage where they've neglected speaking for so long, now they're actually afraid of doing it because they're afraid of making mistakes and they're afraid of pausing. Whereas if you just do that at the start, when you know that you're not that good, and you just sort of embrace the fact that you're going to make mistakes, so you just go with it, that's so much better than leaving it to the end when your Spanish is really good, but when it comes to speaking you make loads of mistakes and then you're just really worried and self-conscious because you know you're making these mistakes. Whereas at the start you're just kind of like, well, I've only just started, let me just speak, and I'm going to make mistakes, but this is part of the learning journey. And that's why I think speak as early as possible. And like I said before, try and be specific with your language learning. Try and relate it to topics and interests that you have. Like I've touched on before, the question that we asked about what are your interests, just go back to that and think about trying to find resources in your language that are going to be talking about things that you're interested in. And another tip that I have that I would personally use, which some people may disagree with, is buying a grammar book. And the reason for this is because I just found it really overwhelming trying to learn the grammar of Spanish online. There's just so much content online, so many videos. I didn't know which one to trust and which one to go with. And this made me feel really overwhelmed and sort of a lot of the time made me neglect my grammar. And this is something that we don't want to be doing. We want you to be working on your grammar as much as you're doing everything else, because the grammar is really, really important when learning and speaking a language. And for me personally, I think it's much better to buy one resource or look at one resource online that you find that maybe is paid or maybe isn't, that you can just find and you know it's got everything on there that you're going to need. So you can just keep falling back to this one resource and not need to look online and watch 5 videos to try and find one piece of advice, you know what I mean? And feeling really overwhelmed, not knowing which resource to trust. I think just finding one and sticking with that, I think is really, really impactful and really, really beneficial, and I'd recommend that for you. And that's all for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I hope the system really, really helps you with your language learning journey. And I just wanted to quickly cover the plan, the final stage. Obviously, we've gone over the goals and sort of the system and then the plan. So the plan will be 3 months. You have your goal at the end of the 3 months, and then you break that down into month chunks, and then sort of again, really thinking about that goal that you've got in place and how are you going to get there. Think about the different stages and the different things you're going to need to learn, and then put those throughout the 3-month process to then reach that goal. And then make sure, again, try and replace the podcasts and the music in your own language and replace that with podcasts in the language you're trying to learn. And again, remember, podcasts and not music, ideally. And once you finish that 3-month process, you can just repeat this again for another 3 months and another 3 months and another 3 months, and see where you get to with your Spanish or language learning journey in general. So I'm hoping that this plan will help you, because I think it will help me when I start learning Portuguese in the future. And even if you are at a more advanced level, I still recommend you look at these questions and really sit with the system and see how you can implement it into your journey, because it may be that these things can help you become more effective and more efficient in your language learning journey. So I'd really recommend thinking about these plans and systems. And I hope you've enjoyed the video. Hasta la próxima. Adios.